Just search.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. We are now transitioning from the NFC to the AFC East. We do want to include some AFC East guys, and this guy that I'm going to be talking about right now is someone who is flying under the radar on a Patriots defense that's kind of a little bit scatterbrained and doesn't really have many pieces to build around. But this guy has always been a constant, and I think that the new head coach, Jerod Mayo, being a solid presence in terms of what he adds to the defensive game plan, I really think this guy is going to have a very explosive year. And we are, of course, talking about Matthew Judon. I really think it benefits Judon to have a guy like Jerod Mayo, one of the best Patriots linebackers of the recent years, having him as a head coach, because in a system where he's kind of the central power in this defense, he really needs someone who can create a culture that allows him to develop other guys around him, because as I see it right now, Matthew Judon is the guy for the Patriots because they don't have much depth up front in their front three. Their secondary, they have some guys like Duggar, who I like, but not really one who catches your attention. So Matthew Judon has a lot of weight to carry in this defensive front. And so what I look for out of him is kind of this hybrid linebacker pass rushing role where he's kind of manning different spots. I know he's not the middle linebacker. In fact, he's the weak side linebacker, which requires him to be just as athletic and agile as, say, a defensive end. But I really think that Matthew Judon is a nice little chess piece to what the Patriots can do defensively. I think Jerod Mayo is going to diagnose that we might have to lean on our linebacker core a little in order to generate pressure. And in terms of Matthew Judon, he's a fantastic asset, but there are some caveats. But without further ado, let's jump right into the stats that pop off the page for Matthew Judon. Now, as a career, he's accumulated 806 fantasy points. His best season was in 2022 with 143.2. He had 10 solo tackles last year, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 9 QB hits. Ultimately, this was an injury-racked season. He underwent bicep surgery over the offseason, and he is kind of getting older in age in terms of he's 31 years old. He's entering his age 32 season. But if it makes it any better, in 2022, he did have his best season, 60 tackles, 15.5 sacks. So as you can see, when needed and if fully fit, Matthew Judon certainly is one of the premier linebackers and plays like an edge rusher at that position. So when I look at the Patriots linebacking core, it's definitely a thin position group. You have Jawan Bentley, Jelani Tavai as your two other linebackers, and when you look at their front, you have a guy in Christian Barmore who I think can develop a little bit more. I still think he hasn't reached his ceiling just yet. And so I think that what you're going to have to build on if you're Jerod Mayo and if you're the defensive coordinator of the Patriots is understanding that the generation of pressure in this system does not necessarily have to all be on, Matthew Judon. It can come from his movement as well. And especially coming off a surgery, a big surgery, as you're getting older, especially, it can be to your benefit to help your team in terms of your moving abilities. You don't necessarily have to get to the quarterback. You don't necessarily have to get tackles for loss. You can be a linebacker in terms of sideline-to-sideline strength. I don't think there's anyone better than Matthew Judon in the league. Not many better, because there are better linebackers that I believe. But there's not many better sideline-to-sideline players and guys who can operate in many different roles than Matthew Judon. And that versatility can come in handy. Because, say Jerod Mayo may not trust him to have a heavy workload. maybe he does want to see more out of Bentley and Tavai at the linebacker positions. He can rest Matthew Judon a little bit, get him in on later downs, and then, be able to mix his coverages. Because if I'm Matthew Judon right now, I'm saying, hey, 2 years ago I had my best season, my career year. Last season, I got hurt. And so, what can I do to benefit the team while also protecting myself? I know Jerod Mayo definitely wants to implement me. Me and him will probably have a great relationship. But in order to preserve myself, I can be kind of the gadget guy now. And that can really lead to benefit in terms of IDP, because in late downs, that's where linebackers get most of their stats. That's where a lot of linebacker production comes from, because that's where you send pressure. And Matthew Judon, like I said before, he's the ultimate pressure linebacker. His movement alone, his presence alone, is like that of an extra defensive end. And so, I'm really intrigued as to how he's going to want to fit into the system if he sees himself as fully fit. Because I think what's going to matter for the Patriots right now is just identifying a defensive identity. You don't necessarily have to see it come to fruition this season, but identifying what you want to build around and how you want to build around it is going to be highly integral to how this team looks in the long run. They know they're not going to have that great of an offense. They know that Drake May is going to have to take a while to get adjusted to the league, just dipping his feet into the water. And I think their defense is going to see a lot of snaps this year. And it's definitely going to be a very sink or swim mentality there. And so, what I want to see, if I'm a Patriots fan, from my defense is a buy-in to an idea, a philosophy. Because what really created this rift in the Belichick era was that Belichick couldn't identify with this more younger group. He made a lot of poor decisions with how this defense was built, with how this defense played, and it really is leading to the detriment of this defense as they head into the season, because I think that Jerod Mayo will have a decent season. I think in terms of his coaching style, in terms of what he wants out of his team, I think he's setting good foundations. But it's going to be very difficult to see it translate to the field, especially early on, if you know there are lingering concerns about how these players' mindsets were affected by the Belichick era. It's going to be a little while before they truly buy into Jerod Mayo's mindset. There are going to be some speed bumps along the way. This is going to be a very, very rocky season for the Patriots. There's not going to be many wins to come by, and it's going to be very frustrating on both sides of the football. But you do need a significant change in culture, maybe in the latter stages of the season, in order for me to truly say that anyone outside of Matthew Judon could have an impact. I like some pieces around Matthew Judon, but this season is going to be very pivotal for Matthew Judon. And if he's not fully healthy, then the walls will come crashing down for the New England Patriots on the defensive side of the football. And certainly there has to be concern about his longevity as well, because I think his style of play certainly tends to a shorter career, because when you're someone in a defense that completely relies around your abilities, and you just suffered one of your first injuries, you underwent surgery, you're getting older in age, and you have a new head coach, and these players are not fully developing, it kind of gets frustrating, and it kind of is one of those moments where you have to consider, hey, how long can I be doing this? So there are a lot of concerns surrounding Matthew Judon, and it's too Judon-centric for me to fully have confidence in him kind of being able to take it easy while still getting the stats that we know he can put up. And so this season is going to be a career-defining season for not just Matthew Judon, but for everyone on that defense. Matthew Judon, no matter what part he plays in it, is going to be heavily scrutinized this year. He's going to be especially scrutinized for how he helps this team and this unit. And so, while I truly want to say, in terms of IDP, there's no one like Matthew Judon, and I think he wears so many hats that you can't help but pick him, there are a lot of caveats here. And I really think that you have to be mindful of a guy like Matthew Judon, because we don't know how long he's going to continue playing. We don't know if more injuries will spike up throughout this season. However, nevertheless, he does have someone at the head coaching position who I think he can really find trust in, and that reciprocity is going to translate to the field, because Matthew Judon, at the end of the day, is the best defensive weapon in New England Patriots' arsenal. He's going to be deployed in so many different ways as long as he's on the football field, and that's the main reason why I can't necessarily look past him, and the main reason why the Patriots' defense will find some modicum of consistency as the season goes on. They have to find a culture, and Matthew Judon is the guy, combined with Gerard Mayo's mind and his defensive game plans, to really see it translate. Maybe in this season, but into next season as well. But coming next, I hope you enjoyed this segment. Coming up next, we have another AFC East linebacker. This guy definitely going to have a lot more responsibility. A guy who's definitely going to vault into the stratosphere as well. We're going to be back with the fantasy player profile of Matt Milano on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast.